Today I thought I'd take a quick look at the floppy drive on the Amiga, the internal one, and take it out, open it up and give it a bit of a clean. The heads will probably need a bit of a clean as well. It's just a good idea to do that. So I'm going to take all the keyboard out of the way, which also needs a clean. I've unhooked the cables. To get the floppy drive out, there's 3 screws. Basically there's these 2 on the back here. And this is where a magnetic screwdriver would be useful. And I'll need to hang on to the drive as I turn that, so it doesn't fall out or break this plastic tab down here. And then we can just loosen that one off, and then that's the drive out. You can see on the top here there's these lines. It's where the dust and dirt's got through the top of the Amiga casing and then settled in a line. So what we're going to do is take out all of the screws to get this metal casing off the drive. There's 2 on the sides, as you can see, one here, and then there's another one on the other side. And then finally there's one on the top here, this little tiny one at the end. And once that's out, the whole drive should slide out of the front of the casing, like so. Now the bits that we want to clean here and work on is this area here where the stepper motor is. That's the motor that moves the head for the drive up and down the disc surface, and also the heads themselves, which are basically this bit here. Hopefully you can see in there that little white thing. That's the lower head, and then on the underside here that's the other head. So there's one for each side of the disc, because they're double-sided discs on the Amiga. So they'll need cleaning. Obviously they're a little bit difficult to get at, so the best thing for that generally is a cotton bud with a bit of isopropyl alcohol on the end. So I'm going to see if I can tip this up so that it's visible. And you have to be careful pulling this head mechanism back, because it's under tension and you don't want to overdo it and damage it basically. So I'm trying not to pull it too much. I'm just going to get a cotton bud, and then just a case of getting the cotton bud under there and just giving the surface a bit of a rub. A bit too rough with that then. It's on like a springy mounting, so you have to be careful not to snag the corners, because the corners are quite sharp and you can easily snag. If you're too rough, you could snag one of these corners and pull the whole thing down that way, which would definitely not do it any good. And then the other one down there, hopefully that's showing up. And again, it's just a case of giving it a bit of a rub. This one's actually mounted on a solid plate. It's not got the same springy mounting as the one on the top, this one here. So just give it a rub. It just gets any debris off of it. And that noise was the plastic eject button falling off. It looks like the tab's broken here on the end. Yeah, that's broken. That'll need sorting out as well. So that's the head cleaned. The motor, again, we can clean off the old grease, perhaps with a cotton bud, just by rubbing. It's just all like a horrible black gunge, as you can see. Just get off what I can get at. Yeah, you can't. On some drives you can pull this back and it will skip over the steps. I think CD-ROM drives you can do this, but these floppy drives don't seem to have that option. So really we need to get the head moved back that way. So what I'm probably going to do is put this back in the Amiga to do that bit, and then we can get the head to move around and get a bit of grease on here, a bit of fresh grease. Now if you want to get at this under here, underneath this black tray, which is where basically what holds the disc, it's possible, but it is a bit tricky to get this back on again once you've got it off, and you also have to be careful because the heads will touch. But you can do it if you need to, if there's any reason you need to take that off. So I'll show how you can do that. First thing you need to do is take this screw out up here. Like so, and this has just got a small threaded section on the end, as you can see, and the rest is just a smooth shaft. The reason for that is because this plastic carrier has to be able to move in an up and down motion, and that screw allows that to happen. To get this out, you basically just slide this forward and it will go with a click. You don't want to slide it right out, and you want to be able to grab hold of this head gently, and then you can gently lower that down, because obviously at this point the two heads are basically touching, so you need to be careful with that. Then that means you can now clean all this up if you want, if you feel the need to clean that up, or if there's anything, say springs come out or something, you can get at that and do all of that. So I'm going to give this a quick clean, and then now it's out I might as well, and then I'll show how to get it back together again, because that's not so straightforward. Actually I've just gone and fetched one of these anti-static brushes, so this is probably going to be a better thing to use for this. So I've given that a bit of a brush down. I'm also just going to give this a quick brush down as well. To get this back together, the first thing we need to do is make sure that this is in the ejected position, which is actually when this is pressed in, because when that's pressed in it's as if the button's pressed, the eject button's been pressed, and obviously your disc's then been thrown out. So that the ejected button's when that's position is when that's in. You'll notice on the sides there's these cutouts in the casing, and there's these plastic rollers on this tray which holds the disc, and they need to basically go back into there, and then when the disc's put in they will then drop down into there. So in order to do that, so first thing you need to do, press that, and then that mechanism will be locked. If you don't do that first, you won't be able to get this in properly. The next thing, lift the head itself just gently up with one of your fingers, and then you can push this into position, and just what you need to do is make sure that these little wings on the head are riding on this cutout in the plastic tray. So you can see here those wings have got to run on this plastic groove on either side. You should then be able to push the tray the rest of the way onto the drive, and then you can see that's actually triggered the eject. as if a disc's been put in as I slid the tray in. Now that's not helpful because we need to get a screw that we took out earlier, this little bolt, back in this hole up here, but that needs to be in alignment with the hole in the aluminium casting underneath. So we need to press the eject button again, and then that helps free this up so that it's easier to position. As you can see, I can move that around now and get that in alignment. So I should now be able to drop the screw into there, the bolt, and then that tighten back up again. I obscured the camera view, but don't need to over tighten it, but it just needs to be firm. And that should be it. Just check that the plastic rollers are in position on the sides as they should be. You can just check down, make sure these wings are on the top of here and that the head is lifted, and you'll see the head is almost, or this copper shielding is almost flush with the top of the plastic tray. Now you can try with putting a disc in, but rather than just slamming the disc straight in, the best thing to do is go very slowly up to the head and then gently push it in. You shouldn't feel the disc catch anything until it gets right past the head here. If it does feel like it's catching, you've probably done something wrong, because what it will be is the metal shutter will be catching the head in there, and if you continue to slide the disc in, it's possible you could rip the head off of the mechanism here. So in this case it's fine, and you'll see it goes in, and once it's locked in, you'll see the head's now dropped down, or the, I don't know what the word for this is, the thing that holds the head is now at an angle. So that should be okay. You can see the mechanism here as well. While we've got this open, it's easy to see the mechanism of how all this works to lock the disc in. As you slide the disc in, up here there's a little latching plastic bit, and that engages in a cutout on the disc, which you can see on another disc here. That's this bit here, and as the disc slides in further, that's what pushes the aluminium cover open, so that the head can then drop down onto the actual disc surface, which again is just basically like this, so the head can then run along the disc surface. And as you go right up to the very end, you see there's a pin down here, and the disc being pushed against that is what triggers the mechanism to then allow the drive to drop the tray down into these grooves, for want of a better word, and then that's the disc then engaged in the drive as it should be. So that's working fine. Right, so I've got the drive mounted in the Amiga. I've just put a bit of cardboard underneath, stop it shorting out. Obviously that'd be a disaster. So I power it up, you should see the Amiga's just reset and moved the head, so I'm just going to turn that off, and that's going to give me an opportunity now to get it more of this grease and hopefully get it. Power that back on again. You can see here the clicking on the Amiga. This is when the Amiga's sat waiting for a disc. This is what causes it. It's just the head being moved backwards and forwards. I don't know why it does this. I originally thought it was some sort of disc detection system, but there's no real need for it to do that, because as you can see, the two switches on this corner are what's used to detect when the disc's been inserted or if the Read Write Protect is set or not on the disk. This one here towards the outer edge of the drive is the one for the Write Protect state, and the one on the inside is the one that's used to detect whether a disk's been inserted. So you'll see as I press that, the spindle here will fire up and the head will move a little more because the drive's trying to read the disk, which obviously isn't in the drive. So if you're having problems with the drive not detecting a disk when it's inserted, it could be related to this switch. It could be you need to spray a bit of contact cleaner or something in there and just get that working again. Same with the read-write head, read-write switch. Could also be that that switch isn't working and that prevent you from writing to the disk. I'm not sure what state the switch needs to be in to detect whether it's writable or not. This can apparently also cause writing errors during the middle of a write. If one of these switches suddenly changes state, then obviously the drive's going to get confused. So these are worth looking at if you're having those kind of issues. So the next thing to do is to just put a bit of grease on this stepper motor here. The drive is actually still active at the minute, but that's not really going to be a problem. So I'm just going to brush a small amount on the shaft and load a disc in, and that should get the drive to run up and down the disc, and that will spread the grease about a bit. It's really a little bit too much on there. I'm just turning the power off while the head's in a different position, and get some down here as well. And then let this run for a little bit. And you can see as the drive's working, that grease is being spread about. So I've let that run up and down a few times and it's spread the grease out. There's not too much on there, there's a fair bit, but it's not ridiculous. You don't want too much. The grease I've used is a graphite bearing grease. People also use lithium grease. Silicon grease is apparently not the best because the dust tends to stick to it and it attracts the dust. And also probably a sort of grease you'd use on bike bearings or something wouldn't be much good either, because that tends to dry out, whereas this sort of grease doesn't dry out. So I've actually backtracked a little bit here and I've just removed the plastic tray from the drive again, because I've noticed there's a lot of build-up of muck around the head as well on these this metal area around it. So I'm just going to get rid of that just with a dry cotton bud. There seems to be a lot of fluff and hair-like bits along here. So hopefully that's a significant improvement. Just one final note of warning with this as well. You'll notice that some of the screws on the drive have got little blobs of like a glue. I think it's like a thread lock type glue. And up here, these are basically to make sure these screws stay fixed in position. If you undo these, there's a risk that you'll throw the head alignment out and then you won't be able to read or write your discs properly, or you'll be able to write discs in this drive but then they won't be readable in another drive if the alignment's off. So it's best to completely avoid undoing any of these, because you could end up with a lot of problems to get that back working again. So final thing to do is give this a bit of a clean. I've scrubbed the top, but the lines seem to not want to go. It's tainted the metal, although you can see all the muck that's come off. And then obviously don't forget to clean inside this, because there's quite a bit of dust in this one. be silly to clean the drive and then leave all this dust in here. And then obviously to reassemble it's just the same thing in reverse. You can do this bit upside down. And then just put the screws back in. Yeah, it appears that the eject button has to actually be put on before the metal casing's on, because you can't slide this back on. So if you've taken this off, then you'll need to take that into account. This is broken anyway, so I need to glue that. So for the time being, I'm just going to leave that off, and I shall sort that out at a later time. And that's that done. We're back as we were. Drive's working still. It's all nice and clean now.